Good afternoon, Muttonistas. I'm still in the United States, and having trawled along the northeast part of the country, I thought it would be responsible of me, as an erstwhile traveller, food and beer critic, to include another part of the US, this time the South. I am in Atlanta to watch Manchester City play football, but I thought, well, why not try out the beers and breweries around here? This vlog unusually will be quite heavily brewery based, so I think we're going to have some tasty brews for you here. Maybe not necessarily stouts all the time, but it's going to be fun. Join me, Muttonistas, for my beer and brewery vlog of Atlanta, Georgia. Okay, Muttonistas, first stop is not actually in Atlanta. I've come down all the way to Macon in Georgia. I'm being savaged by flies and mosquitoes here, but I'm going to enjoy the brews of the Fall Line Brewing Company. They reached out to me. Apparently they've got a nitro stout that they are very proud of, so I think I really need to taste it so that you, the Muttonistas, if you're in this part of the world, if you can avoid those flies, have a good idea as to whether it's any good or not. I'm going to try most other beers in their range, obviously not the hideously sweet ones, but I think Muttonistas were onto a winner here. Anyway, these flies are doing my head in. Let's get inside. Muttonistas, this is going to be a review with a bit of a difference. Obviously, the main attraction for me is the stout. However, I do want to try a lot of their range, and because this is the only stop of the evening, I can try quite a lot. It's very, very small measures, and of course, as always, we start with water. I know some of you think I'm just getting pissed up on a jolly every day. Absolutely not. This is serious stuff, serious hydration. And Muttonistas, an extensive beer, cocktail and food menu. I'm just going to show you how everything's brewed on site here. Some of these beers are very, very experimental, so I'm going to be trying some styles of beer that I don't normally bring you. You know, I'm not massively wild about sours, but I know some of you are. I'm going to try a couple of those. Some beers which are a little sweeter, and a classic ale and a lager, before moving on to the main event, the stout. So, given that you don't get much on planes in the United States, I'm a bit hungry, so always best to eat before you drink or eat with your drink, and I have gone for their special chicken Caesar salad ciabatta. Looks pretty nice, potato chips, not quite sure what the dip is, it might be some sort of aioli. Yeah, very nicely done. Call it a salad in a sandwich, and it's got all the flavours you'd expect from a salad, and I do like a bit of ciabatta. Anyway, Muttonistas, I think you're here for the beer rather than the food, but I thought I'd illustrate the sort of food that you can get if you find yourself at the Fall Line Brewing Company. So I do understand that over 100,000 gallons is produced here every single year. That is a lot of beer, Muttonistas. So we have small barrels here behind me, about 6.5 gallons. And how big are these half?
Those are 15.5 gallons.
15.5. Now, I think you'll have to do some conversions if you're in Europe, because I know everything's in litres. But I know that a full keg will usually dispense 88 pints in the UK and Ireland. Not sure what it is here though. I have just been informed that a full keg will dispense 120 pints, so slightly bigger kegs here. Anyway, I'm not going to bore you with a load of technical jargon. I'm sure you want to see me sampling the beer, so let's go and do that. Anyway, Muttonistas, I'm going to get a rack, as usual, or small tasting glasses of 8 different beers, 4 ounces each, which is like a fifth of a pint. So I should be pretty clear-headed when it comes to reviewing the pints themselves. Well, quite a variety there, as you can see, Muttonistas. 8 different beers, excluding the stout. And one of them I know looks a little bit like mouthwash. That's the Baja Sour. I've got tasting notes in front of me. You couldn't possibly expect me not to refer to them when they're beers that I've never actually tried before, so I will be looking to my side and reading them out before I try them. So let's get stuck in from left to right, starting with one of their more experimental beers. Now, I've never heard of a beer like this before. It's called Curtailed Lager, and I'm going to just tilt my head to read the notes here. A smooth, dark chocolate and crisp grapefruit notes. This lager is as easy drinking as is unique. Well, I've never had a lager that's had chocolate notes before and grapefruit, but I would say the chocolate is the prominent flavour. There's a bit of grapefruit here. If you like lager that's a little sweeter, I think you may well like this. I'd say this is pleasant drinking. It comes in at 4.2%, so it is sessionable. Second up, the 4-line lager, their staple base regular lager, 5.2%. Well, I don't think I need to really introduce a lager as a lager. Of course, lagers can vary enormously in terms of flavour and quality, but craft lagers tend to be either well done or badly done rather than massively varying in flavour. That's a good one. It's crisp and clean, and unlike some American lagers, craft lagers, it's not too floral. I would have this any day over your standard Bud, Miller or Coors. I'm going to actually finish this one, it's good. And that lager is Muttonistas' 4 lines best seller. I can see why, but you know, I might find something more tasty in here. Now we're going to move on to their staple IPA, Cloudbreaker, It's a juicy IPA with subtle hints of pineapple and mango, perfect for day drinking. So I suspect this is more of the northeastern or New England style IPA. Comes in at 6.5%, so well, I don't know about a session on that stronger beer, but I have noticed, Muttonistas, that American drinkers are not so much into walloping down a ton of pints like we are on more sessionable brews. Yeah, I have to be honest, this New England stuff is, I can drink it, but it's not my style. I got the fruit, but I got very little hoppiness at all from that. Anyway, onwards and upwards to the next brew, Muttonistas. We've now moved on to something a little different, Yoshi Pilsner. This one is floral, light, crisp body and a clean, malty base, and subtle hints of cherry blossom. Now, apparently there's a cherry blossom festival here in Macon. Some Japanese cherry blossom trees were imported, and it's one of the highlights of the spring. Probably means that the winter's over. Anyway, floral ones are not my style, but you never know, I might like this one. It's actually okay, that is. It comes in at 5.4% ABV. I have to say I prefer their regular lager if you're going to have that style of drink. The cherry blossom taste is actually very, very subtle, and I guess it is a little bit experimental. Anyway, on to the next one. Next, a drink that British drinkers should be familiar with, the Splash Lager Shandy with lactose. Now, I'm just going to look at the tasting notes, and you'll have to forgive me for this, because stuff that I've not tried before. And we basically have a lactose shandy, so it's supposed to feel a bit smoother, but refreshingly tart. That one's quite good, actually. It's the tartness which I liked. 4.2% again. Very, very sessionable. Next up, something I should be familiar with. It's their Nuck If You Buckingham English Pub Ale. Now, just looking at the colour, I'm not sure that's malty enough to be a pub ale, but let's try. It's supposed to be medium-bodied with nutty undertones and a touch of citrusy acidity. Now, that's odd, the citrus nature of a brown or, shall we say, dark ale, but again, these are experimental brews. Yeah, it's a bit odd actually, that one. It falls in between a brown ale and a pale ale. So I think that's one that needs to be improved, but it is an experimental one. 4.3% ABV. Now, the Baja beer, it's supposed to be like a tropical sour, a bit like the Mountain Dew soda, so I'm not sure I'm going to like this. I can feel a massive sugar hit coming from this. Okay, so it's more pleasant because of the sourness, but I think I did mention earlier, these are not my styles of beer, but for you Muttonistas, I'll try most things. And don't worry about it looking like a glass of mouthwash. It isn't. It is actually fruity and sour, but again, a little bit sweet for me. And finally, the French toast sour. Now, this is quite interesting because, believe it or not, I've never actually eaten French toast. I've seen it on a ton of menus, so I'm going in with a very open mind here. I'm guessing from what I'm seeing, I should get a little bit of biscuitiness, a bit of raisin, and the sour finish. So, slightly confused about what I was drinking there. I got the sourness at the end. I think there are people who know a lot more about sours than I do, so I'll leave them to pass judgment on that one. I have to be honest, and you know I give honest reviews, not wild about that one. But anyway, Muttonistas, on to the highlight of the session, the stout. And before we go on to the stout, just a quick water break, because the flavours of those sours are very, very strong. They've left a tart taste in my mouth, which is not really what you want before a stout. I'm going to actually read you out the tasting notes now, but I mean, I know what should be in a stout, and I'm going to comment on, well, what I think should be there and shouldn't be there. And it talks about a classic Irish stout, 4.8% ABV, with a smooth, creamy body, as it should be if it's nitro, with rich roasted malt flavours. Well, yes, to a point, that's all right. Notes of coffee and chocolate, yes, should be in every stout. And caramel for a balanced stout. I keep telling you, Muttonistas, balance is very, very important when it comes to stout. And hopefully no flavour overwhelms the other. So we have the hallowed pint. It looks good, it looks pretty creamy. The temperature is okay, it's decent, very slightly on the cold side, I'd say. Head looks reasonably clean. The odd bubble, but don't forget this isn't Guinness, it's their own stout. Served on 70-30 gas, so I hope that the head maintains its shape as we go down the glass. I like it, I like it, I like it. This is nice, Muttonistas. I'd call this a creamer. It is really, really nice. Very well balanced, Slight hints of bitterness as you want, but not excessively bitter. Very, very, very slight caramel flavours. I'm not getting a lot of that, and I don't want a lot of that in the stout. I don't mind a subtle amount. I think, say, a Murphy's, if you're familiar with that, is about as sweet as I'd go with a stout. But Muttonistas, I'm going to drink all of this. I am not wasting a drop. I do like this. Anyway, I think I can have a few more of these, and I'll see you tomorrow, which will also happen to be match day for Manchester City against the mighty Alain. Hi everybody. Okay, Muttonistas, now at Fado in Buckhead, or Fado's Pub. This will have to double up as my match day video and my Instagram reel. So I'll talk about the match a bit later and concentrate on the Guinness. Good looking point, good head, clean head, no bubbles. I've said that a lot, that sometimes bubbles are a bad sign, but the taste is the most important thing. 20-ounce imperial glass, good temperature, and I think it's been drunk into form by the Muttonistas here. That Muttonistas is a proper pint. It's a creamer. Also very pleased to see a gentleman in a city top behind me. For those who follow the football, I know that Juventus won 4-1 today. So in terms of City winning the group, we actually need a big win. Anyway, more about the pub. It is a little bit of a way out of the centre, but well worth it for this creamer. I don't know whether it's normally this busy, but it certainly is. Quite a lot of sports screens, and I think the Club World Cup is on here, which hasn't sadly been the case in a lot of pubs. The pints are flying out, and they do have 2 taps here, and you might have seen in some places when my followers turn up en masse that the Guinness cooling system can give way and lead to massive heads and slightly warm and overly bitter pints. Pleased to say not the case here, and the proof of the pudding is that I was 45 minutes late and they'd sold an awful lot before then. If you're wondering, Muttonistas, about how hot it is very hot here, hotter than Philadelphia and Chicago. Thankfully the kickoff is late, the stadium's enclosed, and this pub is well air conditioned. Maybe you should say you never get warm in the pub when it's an Irish pub in the United States. Anyway, the pint is drinking well right to the end, head's keeping its shape. Had a problem with a couple of them not doing so recently. That is good, that is good. And it just shows you, a lot of people tell me, oh, Atlanta, the south of the states, you won't get a good pint there, but wrong they were, and right you were, Muttonistas, to send me here, and the pub I'm going on to next. So I'll see you at Limerick Junction, another highly recommended Irish pub. So again, the Limerick Junction pub, miles away from the stadium, but recommended by so many of you. And I have to say thank you to everybody who has done, because the Fado again was a great recommendation. And some of you recommended, well, I called it a market, it was more of a food court, but that was also good. Anyway, Muttonistas, once more into the breach, my friends. Okay, Muttonistas, isn't this lovely? Such a warm welcome. And this is a beautiful looking pint. So good looking, I think I could take it home with me. But of course, I have to drink it, Muttonistas. Hopefully drunk into form. Again, I love the fact that I'm getting Imperial 20-ounce pints almost everywhere now. Back in the day when I used to come here, it was 16-ounce pints. I mean, they're okay, but you're having to ask for another one pretty quickly after you receive the first one. Good head, no bubbles, correctly sized head, just above the harp, don't forget, is about right. Many places too thin, too thick. This is about perfect. A little bit on the cold side, but not bad. Anyway, as always, the proof of the pudding is in the drinking. Well, that is very, very good. Actually, slightly better than the one I had at Fado. And I can't quite give it the ultimate accolade, but it's most definitely a creamer. And hey, okay, I'm not using the same scale that I use in Britain or Ireland in particular, but it's still a very good pint. I've had a lot of worse pints in Ireland. I've certainly had plenty more worse pints in Britain. So this is actually really good. And all of you who said, oh no, Mutton, in the south of the US you can't get a good pint, I say bollocks, yes you can. Oh, and I wish I could convert everybody here to being a Man City supporter, but I think they're watching mainly golf and baseball. Oh well, never mind, maybe in time that'll happen. Okay, Muttonistas, final day of the vlog. You might have noticed I've had a hot towel shave. I actually had a day off yesterday, edited the football video and just had a lazy day drinking coffee, water, reading the news. I mean, I only just discovered that people were lobbing missiles at each other in the Middle East. That's how... Anyway, I've come to a different stadium. I've come to the home of the Atlanta Braves, the baseball stadium. And I'm coming to a brewery tap which has outlets all around Atlanta. They do obviously have a big brewery here, and this is more of a little brew pub, Blue Moon. I've actually had it in Britain. I think it's their signature pale ale or hazy ale that I've had here, but they do have a variety of brews. And of course, as a City fan, Blue Moon does strike a chord. Pleasant, cool, air-conditioned bar, despite there being fans on as well. And I understand, as you probably guess, that this place is absolutely heaving on match days. And apparently, it's not a case of just being at home or away, as is the case with football. When they play series against other teams, there'll be lots of consecutive home games, like 4 a week. Wow. Whew, could you imagine that for football? I wouldn't be able to keep up with the vlogging. But before we sample the brews here in the tap room, we're just going to take a little tour of the facilities and we might have a little cheeky something straight from the source. Will it be a keg? Will it be from a tun? I don't know, but I'm sure it's going to be fun trying it. So what a treat this is, Muttonistas, straight from the source. Fresh from the barrel, foam of the Braves. I know that we all know the phrase home of the Braves. It's a take on that. It's a Keller Pils. It comes in at 4.7% ABV.
So this is our foam of the Braves Keller Pils. A Keller Pils is essentially an unfiltered Pilsner. So we brewed this beer with a lot of German malts and hopped it with German grown Pearl hops and German grown Saphir hops. It's slightly hopped, but it still has a decent amount of bitterness for a Pilsner. And because it's unfiltered, it has a little bit more of a smoother, creamier texture to it. and alcohol is 4.7%, so we feel like it's perfect for a hot day at the baseball game. So hope you enjoy Foam
Well,
the Braves.
thank you, Chad. And I can tell you it is blisteringly hot out there. I was in the sun. It said 34 degrees. I mean, it may as well have been 44 as far as I was concerned. So this does feel cold and refreshing and does look good. And a lot of you, I know at home, when you see something a little bit cloudy off colour, so it's a bit dodgy, that I'm going to send it back. No, this is how it's supposed to be. Cool and refreshing it is indeed. And I got a little bit of the hoppy taste at the end, not massively, as is the case with lagers. I'm not saying I could drink this all day, but I could drink this all of this afternoon.
I'd say a couple of years ago. And then luckily I was able to go over to Cologne, Germany and sample many cultures.
Okay. And now we're just waiting for the Kolsch beer, something I've had quite a few times in Britain and a lot in Germany. Seb's going to explain the difference between Kolsch and Pilsner.
So Kolsch and Pilsner is based on your yeast strains. Kolsch strain is somewhere between an ale strain and a lager strain. It's fermented at a different temperature. About 57 degrees is the general consensus among it. It's light, it's crispy. One of my favorite parts about the Kolsch yeast is it gives off a pear flavor. And what we've done is we ferment at a bit higher of a temperature, that way we're able to have the yeast be more expressive. So it's 5%, it's crispy, and we love it.
Well, having made such a good start, Muttonistas, on the Pilsner, looking forward to this Kolsch. It's just clearing up and settling, as is the case when it comes straight from the barrel. But I am going to be given a rare treat today to drink this pint outside in front of the stadium where they normally play baseball. Don't forget, Muttonistas, in Britain you can't grab a pint and take it to your seat. You have to have it in the concourse out of sight of the pitch. Most of Europe, you can't even get a drink at all, but here, normally you can take a drink to your seats in those aluminium or aluminum cups, so being able to take a glass of a very tasty local brewed beer to the stadium whilst there's nothing going on is still going to be a bit of a treat. Now, believe it or not, Muttonistas, you can sit here during a game with a general admission ticket. You have to get here early. Wow, but to be able to see the whole game, sat down here, having a few scoops, I'd give a kidney for that in Britain. And that Kolsch, reet tasty as well. Okay, a little bit, shall we say, lighter, I'd say, than the Pilsner, but not by much. Okay, Muttonistas, very tasty Kolsch. I didn't drink all of that because we have more beers to try in the tap room. And if I go down to the tap room and drink 3 more pints, their other beers, I'm going to be absolutely smashed by the time I get to the next venue. And of course, that means me talking more bollocks than usual. I'll see you in the tap room. Okay, Muttonistas, I'm sure those of you who watch me regularly will know how this goes now. I like a little sampler of everything, and I have a pint of what I decide to be my favourite at the end of the video. Obviously, I can't have a pint of them all. I mean, a lot of you question my manliness when I have these small things. Well, I invite you to try having 6 or 8 pints here and then go and review 2 more places and be able to speak in a straight and unslurred voice. Anyway, I'm going to go from light to strong in terms of alcohol content, as I always do. 6 samplers in front of me, And of course, I'm going to have to look at the tasting notes or the description of the beer, because I can't have an encyclopedic knowledge of every beer I try for the first time. Anyway, we're going to start with the Blue Moon Helles. That comes in at 4.8%. Obviously a style that I quite like. Popular in Munich, as opposed to the Kolsch's that you get in the sort of northwest Rhineland area. Yeah, I mean, exactly as you'd expect for a Bavarian lager, that is. If I got that in Munich, perfectly happy with it. I can't describe everything that's going on in there, because don't forget, I'm not really a lager expert. Anyway, okay, now on to a German Pilsner, Happy Pils. And a lot of you do say, oh, Mutton, it's summer, what are you doing drinking stout all the time? Well, first of all, I like stout. I know a lot about stout. It's something you can have in all weathers. But I do agree with you that in summer, this is pretty nice. And this is a very light-coloured German Pilsner. I have a feeling, and I might be wrong, it might be similar in character to the Augustiner Pils that I'm used to having in Germany. Love it with those sausages and sauerkrauts and those pork knuckles, but we're going to try it on its own here. Not too dissimilar at all. Very, very light and refreshing. And you can see by the fact that I'm actually finishing all of these samplers that I am enjoying what I'm tasting. If I'm served up something mucky, well, I'm not going to slag it off, but I'm not going to drink all of it, shall we say. Okay, Muttonistas, on to the next one. And this is a Dunkel beer, a Munich Dunkel style beer, coming in at 5.1%. And what a name it is, Bob's your Dunkel. Well, I sometimes say Bob's your uncle or Mutton's your uncle. Let's see how good this one is. I must admit, it's not my favourite style of beer. When I have darker beers, I do like them to come off a hand pump from a cask. But I'm sure this one's pretty nice. In fact, some of the people around me from the staff, they do like this beer in particular. Yeah, not a bad example of it, but for me, as always, it does come between two stars when it comes from a keg. It's got some of the characteristics of a pale ale, and it's not malty enough, in my opinion, to be a brown ale. So this is one I'm leaving half of. Doesn't mean it's a bad beer, just not my cup of tea. Anyway, onwards and upwards, Muttonistas. Next, Grounder. This is an American wheat beer coming in at 5.7%, so they are getting strong now. And of course, you don't have to go around downing 10 pints every evening. I wouldn't call this a session beer, it's a bit strong, but you could easily have 4 or 5 of these in an evening. Now, I'm getting some interesting flavours, actually surprisingly hoppy, which I like. I'm not sure what else I'm getting in there. It's something a little floral as well, would I be right there? Yeah, again, not my cup of tea, but I know some of you like it. This is why I'm trying it, so that you don't have to. I'm sure it's a good representation of this style of beer, but not for me. Doesn't mean it's not for you, though. Okay, I missed out the Blue Moon Kolsch, a little bit different, I think, from the one I just tried upstairs. This one a lot clearer because it's come through the lines, through the taps, but it does look pretty tasty, and I don't mind a Kolsch at all. Yeah, very good example of it. I quite like it, possibly having had some of these heavier, hoppier beers, because don't forget that wheat beer did have quite a lot of Simcoe hop in it. So I think, again, this is good, easy drinking on a hot summer's day. And don't forget, a Kolsch is a Kolsch because of the importance of the yeast in its flavour, the temperature it's brewed at. Anyway, 2 more to go, and I'm sure I'm going to love the Blue Moon IPA. It has that holy trinity of hops, Simcoe, Amarillo and Citra. A beautiful blend always. I think, well, I'm guessing this is going to be my favourite. I can't say until I've tasted it, but if you go to Ladbrokes and have a bet at this point, I would suggest it may well be so. Comes in at 6.3% ABV. West Coast style pale ales tend to be a little stronger than your normal pale ale. Yeah, not surprisingly, that does it for me. It's actually not too fruity up front as some of these West Coast pale ales are, but I did taste a bit of citrus, but I love that long hoppy finish. I think this is going to be the one I'm going to have a pint of, but we still have finally 3 up, 3 down to taste before we make that decision. And finally, their strongest beer, 7.5% ABV. In a way, I'm hoping that this isn't my favourite, because a pint of 7.5 is going to make for some interesting vlogging later. But again, it uses the Holy Trinity, the Simcoe, the Citra, the Amarillo, but the difference is in the malt and the finings. I know this is probably way too deep technically for you, so I'm going to get on with the tasting. I like that. Hazies can often be sweet. This is dry and hoppy the way I like them. However, as I suspected, the Blue Moon IPA is the winner, and I'm about to have a pint of that. So, Muttonistas, unfortunately you're getting sloppy seconds again here. This pint of the Blue Moon IPA, if you remember, 6.3% with my Holy Trinity of hops. Absolutely delicious. A bit strong for a massive session, but good for a, shall we say, a pint or two. Of course, even better when served by the pint. Again, as I said earlier when I did the tasting, very slightly fruity start, but boy do I love those hoppy finishes. I'm going to try some food here, because a lot of you are probably not aware of what you can get at stadiums and outlets around stadiums in the United States. And wow, what a choice. I mean, when you walk from where the taxi dropped me off to the stadium, you are spoilt for choice. And I'm going to go for some beef brisket, an American barbecue speciality, but we're going to go back to the beer that I think that will pair it best, the Foam of the Braves, a 4.7% Pilsner. I'll be right back with you. Right, down to the table, and we have fatty brisket. I think it's got a slightly blackened or spicy coating. Slaw. This is a tangy barbecue sauce. I think it's got a bit of vinegar in it. And this is a spicy ketchup. I think it's Heinz with a few chili or pepper flakes in. And some sweet potato Glasgow salad. Okay, just to wet our whistle, Muttonistas, a quick slurp of the Foam of the Braves. And that should get us in tune to try this food. I'll start off with the fries without anything on them. A little spicy. I think there's something sweet on top of them as well. Good opportunity for me to try the sauces now. I have to say, ketchup is not my usual thing, but when spiced up with this, I quite like it. And finally, the barbecue sauce. That's sharp and tangy. I'd say it's actually halfway between what you consider to be a normal barbecue sauce and a brown sauce like HP in Britain. Let's see how it goes with the meat. And by the way, this would set you back $25, I believe. There's always tax and tip here, so be wary that it's not going to cost what you think it's going to cost here in the States. From its appearance, it did look as if it would be overcooked, but it's not. It's soft, tender, melt in the mouth. Better have another quick slurp, Muttonistas. A bit of the slaw. I was going to go for salad at first, but I do remember that this is a traditional accompaniment to barbecued foods. And I do understand that on match days, this is a very, very popular way of eating. Okay, I must admit this tastes like most coleslaws or slaws that you'd see. Maybe it's supposed to be something special, but it's pleasant. And I'm probably going to eat it all, but it's not like it's the best slaw I've ever had in the world. Far from the worst. Pretty nice. Anyway, let's try the meat with the sauce. Yeah, that's a very good combination. Actually, I just think the meat on its own is pretty darn tasty, especially with that blackened outside. Anyway, Muttonistas, I'm going to plough on with this because we've got another brewery and then a pub to visit, and hopefully I'm still match fit by the time I get to Inner Voice Brewing, our next stop. Okay, Muttonistas, penultimate stop in Atlanta, second place on my final day, Inner Voice Brewing, one of the first breweries in this area to reach out to me. I have a feeling, I can't remember off the top of my head, that they do have a Nito Stout here. I'm not going to spend long talking about the brewery. I believe their pizza room and their pizza's pretty good, but we're here for the beer. Same thing as always, a little sampler and then a pint of something I like, hopefully the stout. It is absolutely roasting out here, even though it's like 6:30 in the evening, so I'm scarpering in there, hopefully to an air-conditioned room. Hi everybody, hello. City on the television winning away at Arsenal, but the Mutton flag as well. Well, isn't that nice, Muttonistas? The Mutton flag, which you can see behind me, and for obvious reasons you can't see all the Man City games being played on the television, but it is a very nice thing for them to do. I'm still on my little water break because the driver, a lovely guy from the Caribbean, talked about cricket all the way through, but he was a bit stingy with the air conditioning, shall we say, so I fried on my hour-long journey, which I didn't expect to be quite as long. But as usual, I'm going to try little bits of whatever they have to offer and then give you my favourite pint at the end. But I'll be back with you after I've had my water. So here we go, after that warm welcome, another selection of locally brewed beers at the Inner Voice Brewery for me to try. No stout here, but there are a lot of other styles of beer here. We've got an English mild, we've got some hazies, we've got a double IPA, a West Coast IPA, a Czech amber pilsner, a Czech standard pilsner, and something rather interesting, a mango lassi sour. As always, we start from the weakest first up to the strongest, and then I'll choose a pint of something I like. So I understand, and yet again, forgive me for having a little peek because I've never had these beers before. We're going to start with whatever the weakest beer is. So Muttonistas, Macrodose, a lovely brew. It's rare that I find that beers that are this strong are my preferred brew at any tap room. And it's been canned today, so you can get it canned if you so wish. For this style of keg IPA, canned is not a bad option, I do have to say. This is a 16-ounce American-style pint glass. You wouldn't think it just looks like a large tumbler, but it is plenty enough for me. As always, Muttonistas, if I say I'm going to drink a pint, I do drink a pint. No fake reviews. If I'm not drinking a whole pint, it's because I'm unwell or on a diet. It slips down so nicely, but these beers, yeah, you have one, you're okay. It can catch up with you, so one is all I'm going to have. And before we finish up here at Inner Voice, pizza. They have a little pizza room next door. All good tap rooms should have some sort of food offering. Sometimes it's tacos, sometimes it's pizzas, sometimes it's burgers, whatever it is. Important to have something. This looks really good. As always, Muttonistas, I don't mess about when I have pizza. Just cheese and tomato, okay, sometimes with anchovies or something, but not much else. And it looks pretty good, I have to say. Thin crust. tasty and crispy. I don't think my friends from Italy would turn their nose up on this. Really good tomato sauce base and a cheese topping that's very flavoursome but not overpowering. Anyway, Muttonistas, I'll see you for the last visit, the last venue, the last session of the tour at the Brick House pub, and many people rave about the stout there. Muttonistas, the final venue for my vlog of Atlanta. Now, a shout out to O'Sullivan's across the road. A lot of people said to me that that is a place that pours a pretty good pint of Guinness. Anyway, I've come to the Brick store. Again, a bit of a late burner in terms of recommendations. A lot of you didn't recommend it until the last moment. Hopefully a good pint of Guinness. I can forgive them for keeping it cold here, but a cracking atmosphere, I believe, inside. Warm fittings and, I believe, cask ale. Anyway, I can't stand another moment out here. It is horrible. I don't like heat, full stop, but this, oh. And I'm going to have to take another water break before we get going here because, wow, that heat and humidity is really zappy. But we're going to have a good few pints here once we get settled in. And I hope the Muttonistas are drinking the Guinness into form because I can see plenty of them on it. Hi, lovely bar. This is the way it's appointed. So, Muttonistas, what a treat, as I said. A chance to try cask ale in the United States. First time ever. You probably realise that in Britain I drink it all the time. And for those of you who turn your noses up at that, try it. I recommend you try cask ale. It is a way of serving creamy, tasty ales, including, by the way, stout and porter, which is going to be the first of the 4 brews I try. I'm going to look at the notes. Again, you can't expect me to know every single beer everywhere. And we're going to start with the Blue Jacket Company Porter, an East India style porter from Washington, DC. 6.2%, espresso, chocolate, treacle, and it's roasty. Well, as long as it's balanced, it should be good. And cask delivery of stouts is excellent. I never object in Britain to trying a cask stout. And again, look at the lacing on the side of the glass. Very, very nicely served. And of course, it means that the cream, unlike a keg porter without the nitrogen, will not go down to the bottom. I'm going to leave it at that because it's strong. It's 6.2%. I've got other brews to try. The one thing I would say, though, it is a little bit coffee heavy. So just be aware that if you don't like coffee stouts, you might not like this one. Now, cask number 2. I've heard of this one before, and some of you will as well. Sierra Nevada, very popular pale ale. It is actually amber coloured rather than being seriously pale, and apparently, apart from their own brewery tap room, this is the only place that you can get it on cask. That is wonderful. Well, it does mention in the notes an amber colour, assertive pine, candied orange and rustic. That's about how I remember it to be. 5.6%, and their main brewery, which I believe is something that's worth visiting, is in North Carolina. Muttonistas, that is a winner. That is most definitely a winner. I've always liked this in bottles, but wow, this is so much better on cask. I'm not being biased because I'm British. It does have better flavour, better creaminess, and it's not fizzy. Now, a lot of you talk about English style beer being warm beer. That isn't true. So it's not warm, it's fresh, it's cool, but it's not ice cold. Here they do serve it apparently 2 or 3 degrees cooler than in Britain because it would suit the American palate a little bit more. There is a local brew here, I'm going to save that till last, but now we are going to have the Blue Jacket Glory Child English style IPA from Washington DC. Talks about, well, toffee, toast, floral, hop flavour, moderate bitterness. Well, floral beers are not my thing. I might not like this one, but we'll have to see. And these cask ales cost you about $8 for a pint, so very reasonably priced. I do actually quite like that. When I saw the word floral, it was putting me off a little bit. It's actually not too dissimilar to a pint of bitter in England. Sure, it's not one of the super dark, really malty bitters, but it is still a good approximation of what you'd expect to get in the UK. And finally, a local brew. I do actually have the brewer sat on my left. Good time to try this with its back turned to me, and it is Creature Comforts Curiosity Calls, a blonde ale from Athens, Georgia. It's only 4%, so very sessionable. It's a collaboration with Nofo, and it has that pale yellow colour, slightly hazy of course, as is the norm here in the US. I prefer the clearer ones, but I don't mind the hazy ones either. Talk about lemon pound cake, apricots and a herbal hop flavour. I hope it's not too sweet for me, but only one way to find out. Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. Great for the summer. Sessionable pale ale. It's back's turn, but I'm going to say actually it's my favourite out of the 4. Right, Muttonistas, on to the main event, the Guinness. Very nice looking head. I'd say the head's slightly too large, not by too much. I mean, usually you want the head to just rest above the top of the heart, so maybe I'm being a bit picky there. 3-part pour, not seen that before, and I'm with the landlord or proprietor. I asked about that because I thought, hang on, there are 2 pretty low pours next to a high pour settling together. So it is poured at first, just actually below the Guinness label, and then topped up to just above the harp, and then re-topped up again. Well, let's see whether that makes any difference, Muttonistas. Well, I don't know if it makes a difference or not, but this is a very good pint. It's a creamer. Okay, very accentuated levels of bitterness, which set it apart from, say, something at a top Dublin pub. But for what I'm getting in America, this one's pretty good. Maybe there's something in that 3-part pour. Okay, Muttonistas, I've just had a little chat with the landlord and the local distributor for Guinness, and I think I've worked out why I've not been able to call any of the pints here an absolute creamer. And don't get me wrong, this is perfectly nice, this is, but it's served, I think, of 60-40 or 40-60 gas, and the tap room in Chicago had 75-25. I don't know how easy it is to get the right gas here, but it is a significant improvement when you do have the right gas. Now just think of the Arch House in Bermondsey. I love their stuff on the 70-30, but when they moved it up to 80-20, it was creamerissimo. And that's why I've not been able to call this an absolute creamer, just a creamer. I reckon, given the flavour here, if they get the gas right, then I'd be able to give the pint the ultimate accolade. Anyway, we're going to try the food here. We're going to try pierogies, something I've had in Poland before. Dumplings here cooked with sage and butter, something I've not had for a long time. And let's hope it goes well with the stout. Okay, Muttonistas pierogies, a little bit heavy, here cooked with sage and butter. Now, when I have ravioli, that would be the choice of cooking in terms of how you prepare ravioli, sage and butter. So I'm looking forward to this. Now, whether it goes with the Guinness or not, I don't know, but let's give it a go. Those dumplings are absolutely gorgeous. Not quite like I had them in Poland because they had various things like sour cream and mushrooms involved, but sage and butter does work well. As I said, it does for ravioli. In terms of how it pairs with the Guinness, it's okay with the Guinness. It's not an ideal match, but don't forget, Guinness is very, very hard to match with food. And those pierogies are slipping down beautifully, as is this pint. Well, Muttonistas, I think I'm going to draw this vlog to its conclusion. I'm going to call it a day here. I'm going to love you and leave you. More vlogs are definitely coming up following Manchester City, although you'll see those earlier because I do prioritise those. In terms of what else is coming beer-wise here in the United States, I don't know yet. I am more than a bit knackered and completely knackered. So we'll see where City take me or don't take me, and then maybe produce something more. But until then, of course, as always, remember to keep liking, keep sharing, keep subscribing, but most of all, don't forget, you can't beat a bit of mutton.